Perched between the ocean and the Sound in Nags Head, completely dominating the narrow sliver of land that makes up part of North Carolina's Outer Banks, is a monumental sand dune, a mountain of lush golden sand. This dune system, known as Jockey's Ridge, is somewhere around 4,000 years old and can reach heights of over 100 feet. It's majestic, it's miraculous, the tallest living sand dune on the East Coast. A unique ecosystem home to a myriad of coastal creatures. A landmark and navigation tool dating back hundreds, if not thousands, of years. A playground for generations of children. And the most visited state park in North Carolina. But did you know that back in the 70s, Jockey's Ridge was slated for demolition to make way for a condominium complex? And did you know that 3 young children and their fearless mother put their foot down quite literally to save it? And that I have one of those children here with me today? Let's fix that. Hello, I'm Shayla Fontaine, and you're listening to History Fix, where I discuss lesser-known true stories from history you won't be able to stop thinking about. I grew up running, rolling, tumbling down Jockey's Ridge like so many kids before me and after me. It's a magical place, a wonderland of sun and sand and wind, like you're on a different planet, like a scene straight out of Dune, but without the giant worms. Anyone who has visited dug their toes into the sand, felt the triumphant rush upon reaching the top after a climb, taken in the breathtaking views from the ridge, and experienced the overwhelming exhilaration of racing down the other side knows. Jockey's Ridge demands respect. Few people know this better than Anne Cabell-Baum, who spent her childhood practically living amongst the dunes with her brother and sister by her side. And so when, on a balmy August afternoon in 1973, they discovered a bulldozer at the base of the dunes, they knew exactly who to turn to for help. Because Jockey's Ridge wasn't the only unwavering force in their lives. If anyone could fix this, it was their mother, Carolista Baum. Carolista knew how to get things done, but she was no outlier in her family. She came from a long line of women who got things done, and Anne Cabell is one of them.
My name is Carolista Ann Cabell-Baum, and let's see, what do I do during the day, or what do I do in my off time for fun? I'm a Friends of Jockey's Ridge board member. That's part of my fun. I'm also on the rehab board, which is the Roanoke Island Historical Association, and that's the Lost Colony. And then I'm also on the Arts Closure board in Raleigh, which is an arts and arts and culture board that puts on 2 big festivals a year. So anyway, that's what I do. Oh, 9 to 5. Oh, yes. How do I make a living? I'm a real estate agent in Raleigh.
Wow, you have a lot on your plate. That's impressive.
Well, I don't know about all that. I think it's just a little bit of craziness that helps me along the way. So anyway.
Yeah. So let's go back in time. So you grew up in Chapel Hill, is that correct?
So sort of. So yes. So I was born in Chapel Hill. I was born in Memorial Hospital before it became UNC Hospitals. So my parents, we lived in Chapel Hill during the winter time during the school year, and there was a jewelry store there, Carolista Jewelry, and in the early 70s, I was born in 67, but in the early 70s, UNC was Chapel Hill was just a college town, and it really closed down the last day of the school year. And so Mom and Dad would close the store, the jewelry store, and we would go to Nags Head, literally the last day of school. And we would not come back to Chapel Hill until the first day of school. And that was the kind of that first week after after Labor Day. And that's just the way it worked. So we were in Nags Head. Mom had the jewelry store. They both worked in the store. And we had a house that was across from Jockey's Ridge, where the two roads come the very closest.
Right. Like that Cottage Row area there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
cool. I
Yeah.
went to UNC, so Chapel Hill is near and dear to my heart, and so is Nags Head.
Okay.
So it's like you were bouncing between two places that mean a lot to me as well. So that's cool.
There you
I
go.
like that she was kind of like riding the seasons of both place. That's so yeah,
Absolutely.
that's
Well, and I mean, Chapel Hill really did. It was like a ghost town during
yeah,
the summertime, and Nags Head was kind of where everybody, at least from Eastern North Carolina, all the way to at least Chapel Hill, if not a little further west. That's where everybody went.
right. She's just
So her
following the crowd.
exactly. And she grew up in Edenton, North Carolina, and my dad grew up, believe it or not, in Fairfield, North Carolina. So they met at ECU. Well, they met before ECU, but they both attended ECU. So
My
yeah,
parents
just
met at ECU as well.
did they?
Yep, yep. Yeah. Anne Cabell and I had a surprising lot in common. Even looking at photos of her and her sister, Inglis, I can't help but be reminded of me and my own sister, one blonde and fair, the other with darker hair and skin. Similar age difference, even.
So mom's mom, Cabell Fletcher Pruden, her mother was Inglis Fletcher.
Right, yes.
Inglis Fletcher dorm on
Okay.
ECU's
Oh,
campus.
wow,
That's my
cool.
great grandmother. So Inglis
Wow.
Fletcher was a historical North Carolina novelist, and not all names were changed to protect the innocent.
Uh-huh.
So
I'm gonna have
there
to
are,
check out some of her books. I'm into it.
yeah, Lusty Winds of the Carolinas, Wicked Lady. I'll think of some more as we talk, but
Cool.
many of them were quite scandalous, but very accurate.
And so that was your great grand was she your great
My
grandmother
great
then?
my
Okay,
great
wow.
grandmother.
Yeah, that
Yes,
was a
yes,
while
yes,
ago.
yes.
So to write kind of like scandalous stuff that long ago, I feel like is very cutting edge.
I know. Well, I mean,
Wow.
so just the women in my family have always been quite outspoken. How about
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
I come about it through the DNA, not
Right. It's in the blood.
exactly.
Inglis Fletcher, the author, was also clearly a force, and I will be reading some of her novels now, whenever I actually have time to read. She was like the Lady Whistledown of the 1940s. Very risque. I love it.
When my parents divorced, and was just after People to Preserve Jockey's Ridge in 1973. 1975 is when Jockey's Ridge became a state park, but my parents divorced right after that. That all of that hard work does take a toll on a marriage. When they divorced, Daddy went back to Chapel Hill and ran the store there. Just literally, we found out in August, and he went back and opened the store, and mom and the three of us stayed in Nags Head, and it was a very cold winter because neither the shop nor the cottage had like heat
Oh, wow.
or air
Oh,
conditioning. I
wow.
know.
Oh, man. It's brutal on the ocean front in the winter, too. I can't imagine.
Yeah, a fireplace both at the shop and at the house. So it was a little chilly,
Yeah.
chilly. So anyway, we were enrolled in school and attended Kitty Hawk Elementary,
Right.
Manio Middle, Manio
That's
High,
like all there was
and
back then, right? It was just yeah.
exactly. So we're all three Manio High graduates. Different years, but the three of us, my sister Inglis, who's probably the most outspoken of us, at least when we were kids, looks just like mom. Dark hair, beautiful olive skin, just absolutely a stunning woman. and then my brother Gibbs, and he's the youngest, and he's named for our father. He's Walter Gibbs Baum. But we're really close in age. We're within 3 years and a week of each other. So every 18 months, we were born. So, but we grew up across from Jockey's Ridge, and never knew any different. Love the beach, love the quirkiness of it, the idiosyncrasies, and just Jockey's Ridge was kind of like our playground. It was, but it was everybody's playground too, right? So everybody that was on the Outer Banks then thought it was a park already, but nobody really understood that it was all privately owned property.
Anne Cabell, Inglis, and Gibbs were certainly not the first to while away an afternoon atop Jockey's Ridge. The commanding landmark has a long history going back thousands of years. Geologists believe Jockey's Ridge formed anywhere from 3,000 to 4,000 years ago. But where all the sand actually came from is a bit of a mystery still. Some of my sources point to storms and hurricanes pushing sand onto the shore from offshore shoals. I mentioned these shoals in the Theodosia Burr episode a couple weeks ago. They're sandbars, essentially shallow areas underwater where the sand is built up, and they're always moving and shifting around. This is what makes this particular coastline so deadly for ships, the graveyard of the Atlantic. So it's possible the sand that forms Jockey's Ridge, or at least some of it, came from the ocean, from those shoals. Other research suggests that the sand that forms the ridge actually made its way there from the complete opposite direction, the Appalachian Mountains in the western part of the state. Marine geologist Dr. Stan Riggs believes there are old riverbeds now buried beneath sand that once carried sediment all the way across the state, depositing it at Jockey's Ridge. The sand is different than beach sand. It's finer, more rich in quartz, which points to a different place of origin. If I had to guess, I'd say it's a little of both. Winter nor'easters and fall hurricanes dredge up sand and blow it right to the dunes. During the summer, southwest winds push it back the other direction. And with this constant push and pull, it just shifts back and forth but never fully blows away. It's stuck because of its unique location right in between two competing winds. Native Americans living along the Outer Banks, the Algonquian people, would have been very familiar with the ridge. They likely kept to the sound side, the backside of the dune, which is protected from the battering ocean winds, with calmer, brackish water that was easier to fish. By the 1500s, European explorers were known to use it as a navigational tool as their ships neared North Carolina's coast, a beacon of gold sticking up from the horizon. It was visible from out at sea, like a lighthouse, pointing them in the right direction. The name Jockey Hill first appeared in a land grant in 1753 to a John Campbell. And an 1851 newspaper article about Nags Head as a summer resort destination calls it Jockey Ridge. Today, it's Jockey's Ridge, with an apostrophe, as in the ridge belongs to jockeys. But as with quite a few other Outer Banks place names, Kill Devil Hills, Nags Head, the real meaning behind the name has become somewhat of a legend. It's possible there was a family named Jackie that it was named after, but the prevailing legend has to do with the wild horses that roam the Outer Banks, banker ponies. These horses are the descendants of Spanish Mustangs that were brought over by Spanish explorers in the 1500s. It's not totally clear how they ended up on the Outer Banks, when the Spanish themselves didn't, not for longer than a quick jaunt anyway. Some speculate that maybe Spanish ships ran aground and were forced to lighten the load by tossing the horses overboard. They, at least some of them, survived and swam ashore. It's also possible they survived a Spanish shipwreck and swam to shore as the ship sank. This is the graveyard of the Atlantic, after all. Anyway, according to the legend, people used to try to capture and tame these wild horses, teaching them to race. Jockeys would race the horses around the dunes, and spectators would watch from the ridge itself, like a giant set of bleachers. But who knows if that's true? I'm pretty sure that's based solely on the fact that there are wild horses here, and a jockey is someone who races horses. Probably more of an assumption than an actual fact. By the mid-1800s, Nags Head had become a tourist destination for wealthy planters hoping to escape the stifling heat and suffocating humidity of their inland plantations to the west. But at that time, the Sound Front was the destination. The beach was barren, wild, inhospitable. In those days, people sought out the cool refuge of the Albemarle and Pamlico Sounds. And so in 1840, the Nags Head Hotel was built at the base of Jockey's Ridge. 2 stories high, with porches running all the way around, the hotel could accommodate 200 guests and even boasted a lavish ballroom for evening entertainment. It was financed by these plantation owners, so they had a place to go for vacation. They built a wharf that reached out a half-mile into the Sound to where boats from the mainland were anchored. There were boardwalks and a horse-drawn railroad that connected the hotel and wharf to the ocean front. Another source said donkey carts. I don't know. But this paradise, built, let's not forget, upon the backs of enslaved workers, would face its fair share of hardship. By 1859, sand had begun piling up along the outside of the hotel, making access to some of the rooms difficult. Like a complimentary shovel comes with your stay. Difficult. During the Civil War, it was occupied by Confederate General Henry A. Wise, who used it as his headquarters. After Wise was defeated in the Battle of Roanoke Island by Union General Burnside, he set fire to the hotel so that the Union Army couldn't use it. Some speculate that the ruins of the original Nags Head Hotel are now buried beneath the sand. An Atlantic Realty article called 9 Things You Didn't Know About Jockey's Ridge claims, quote, David Stick, notable Outer Banks historian, used to tell a more personal story about the hotel. He used to say that when he was a young boy of about 10, he and his friends used to explore the ridge. One day, after a storm, they discovered a door. When they opened the door, they found themselves in a long hallway lined with doors. Each door led to a room, but most rooms were full of sand. As little boys often do, they made this hallway their clubhouse and came often to play in it. He said it was always cold inside the hallway. One day, after another storm, he and his friends went to play in it and the door was gone, buried beneath the sand. No one has seen the old hotel since, end quote. Now, I have not been able to substantiate this. I mean, David Stick was a well-known Outer Banks historian, and he did live here when he was 10, and he wrote a ton of stuff down. According to the Outer Banks History Center, quote, the David Stick papers circa 1750 to 2009 and undated contains correspondence, meeting minutes, ephemera, personal papers, financial records, audiovisual materials, photographs, and maps created or collected by Stick over the course of his life, end quote. It is a monstrous collection, and I don't know if this story is in there or what. I don't have time to do the necessary digging, but I did find this super interesting. It was worth mentioning. Anyway, after the Nags Head Hotel was burnt and possibly buried, another was built in a different location, although still near the dunes, and it eventually caught fire as well, and some private homes were also built. But these all faced the same problem. Eventually, the sand would start pushing its way into the buildings, filling up doorways and pouring into openings. They couldn't keep it out, and so these structures were eventually abandoned and possibly reclaimed by the dunes. We're not totally sure what all is down there. Were the buildings demolished? Were they moved? Or are they still there beneath the sand? Not sure. We know there's a putt-putt course down there because over the last few decades, almost all of a castle has been revealed on the east face of the dune closest to the main road. And that's from a putt-putt course that was built there in the late 1970s. So, I mean, honestly, who knows what else is down there? But Alas, the ridge was privately owned, and the incessantly encroaching sand did not deter everyone from wanting to develop it. By the mid 70s, real estate in Nags Head was starting to take off, and this was a prime location. There was money to be made. So let's talk about that day. I think it was 1973 that, you guys went out to Jockey's Ridge to play like always, and you discovered that bulldozer. Will you tell me a little bit about that day, how that all went down?
Sure. So just your regular typical August 15th day. We went, we always got walked across the street. So we called them roads because it was the beach road and the bypass, right? So we got walked across the beach road, then we got walked across the bypass. And in the 70s, there was nothing except for sand spores between the two roads. So there was none of the bushes and that you see now. And then when you got on the bypass side, the bypass, there were no trees, there were no bushes. Literally, it was nothing but sand. And it was super flat all the way until you got to the back dune. And that's what really feeds the dune, was having all of that kind of the wind blowing over from the ocean and literally feeding the dune. So we were over to play just like always. And once we were across the bypass, we were like, whoop,
Yeah.
running. And oh yeah, we were rebels, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
And if you think about how big Jockey's Ridge is, what, 427 acres,
Wow.
with no trees, no bushes, no
Right.
nothing. It was like massive
Yeah.
playground.
It's like being on a different planet almost. It's like, like you're on the moon. You might as well be on the moon.
I know. And we could run and we would never have to slow down to cross the street. I mean, it was crazy. And the energy that we had as kids was unbelievable. Ask some of our babysitters. And three of us too, right? So but we walked across the bypass that day and up the ridge just like always, and it was a whole lot taller, but we would chase each other up and down and then race each other down and or roll down. We always took a shower. That was always a bath time was always happening after after every
A lot of
day.
sand.
So yes, a lot of sand. So we were up on the ridge and literally had gotten to the top of the ridge that morning. I guess we'd been over on the ridge for a couple of hours, and we got up to the top finally, and um we heard what sounded like track, like trucks, like
Mhm.
heavy equipment kind of thing. And sure enough, there was a bulldozer on the back side of the ridge. And so if we think about it now, that's kind of like the west and north side of the dune
Mhm.
back where the villas are.
Right.
And there was literally a bulldozer back there flattening the dune,
Oh,
like pulling the dune down and putting it in the back of pickup, well, not pickup trucks, I guess they're big huge dump trucks.
right.
And we were like, that is not what we've seen before. So we were, my sister especially, she's so cute. We all, we came down the dune like we always do and went running back, to tell tattletale. And mom was like, what are you talking about? And so she left the shop. She, hightailed it back over there, and here we are in tow watching our mom go across the dune, like we're like, uh-oh, somebody's getting in trouble. And sure enough, she walked straight up to the bulldozer. And as you can imagine, our mom and the distance between where she was coming from and the bulldozer, she's like, hey, waving her arms, hey, hey, what are you doing? Better slow down, stop, stop, stop. And sure enough, the bulldozer operator stopped and she walked up to the side of him and she was like, you're not going to be able to do this anymore. And of course, I don't think he was looking for a confrontation, and she wasn't going anywhere, I can promise you that. So Sure enough, he shut down the bulldozer and literally left. And it was towards the end of the day. So I mean, I'm guessing that he was like, "Oh, I'm not going to mess with you, lady. I'm going to tell my, my company." So anyway, she went back later that evening and removed the bulldozer cap, the distributor cap that is, from the bulldozer. And she grew up, she had six brothers. She
Oh,
was
wow.
one of seven kids. Yeah. And they grew up in Eatonton on at Oak Grove on a big farm. So she, just as a defensive move, I think she knew how to do everything she needed to do around a vehicle and
Yeah,
with my brothers
absolutely.
and all of that other stuff.
Yeah.
So in taking the bulldozer cap, the distributor cap off the bulldozer, she disabled it so they weren't able to continue. And it was my sister who said, had said earlier, everybody's talking about, what's going on at Jockey's Ridge, but nobody's ever doing anything. And sure enough, that was the day Mom did something.
Carolista did more than take the bulldozer's distributor cap. She sprang into action. She drafted a petition titled Save Our Sand Dunes, which got 25,000 signatures in the first week. She founded a nonprofit organization called the People to Preserve Jockey's Ridge. She got on the phone, calling anyone and everyone who could help save the dunes. She lobbied lawmakers to protect the land by turning it into a state park, once spending 3 days sitting in the office of North Carolina Governor James Hunt until he agreed to speak with her. She started fundraising, collecting money to try to purchase plots of land that were privately owned and turn them over to the state for protection. They collected spare change. They sold t-shirts and bumper stickers. They sold honorary square feet of the dune for $5 apiece, complete with a certificate. Carolista set up a hot pink wooden hut near the dune where they sold merchandise and collected donations. Her jewelry store, Carolista's, became the headquarters of the whole operation. And fun fact, her first jewelry store was actually in a building that once served as the ice house for the Nags Head Hotel. I don't know if that's the original 1841 or the rebuild.
She literally that night called the mayor, Carl Nunemaker, and several of the other people who actually became board members of People to Preserve Jockey's Ridge. And she was like, all right, this is the beginning of the end. So typed up the petition, and the next day we were over there like little kids with clipboards, like, will you save Jockey's Ridge? Will you save Jockey's Ridge? Will you sign this petition? And at that time, there was kind of parking there on the right hand side. People would pull off and go up Jockey's Ridge. And sure enough, we started gathering signatures, and donation cans went out with the Save Our Sand Dunes bumper stickers. So I think the Coastline Times printed those bumper stickers. They were fluorescent green, fluorescent kind of orangey, and fluorescent kind of red pink. Those bumper stickers went around all of those kind of cans and stuff that went out to every single one of the businesses. And it was just what we did. And Mom said so we did it.
Yeah, yep. And it worked. That's the amazing thing, is that,
It worked.
it really worked.
Yeah, and she was really people came to the store a lot that was their summer routine. They would stop by there, they would talk to her, they would maybe buy a piece of jewelry, maybe not, but everybody came in there. Literally everybody came in there. Visitors came in, my uncles came in. We were little kids when we were there, and didn't have a babysitter. We were there. We were all there. We all did it. And it was kind of like one of those things. People were in and out of the shop all the time. There was a phone right there beside Mom's workbench, right beside her jewelry bench. And she got on the phone. She started making calls. Half the time we were like dialing the number. Remember, on the old
Right,
voter
right.
phone?
Some effort that went
Somebody
into
would
that.
pick up. Yeah. We would say, hold for Carolista. She would pick up, the extension in the workshop.
Hold for Carolista. I love that, because this woman was a force of nature who could stop a bulldozer with sheer confidence and pure grit. People would hold for her. She was exactly the person to pull this off.
And that's, I mean, basically, a lot of meetings, and a lot of phone calls. And um, it was just that summer was kind of a blur. I remember being in the station wagon, and all three of us were in the station wagon, and then those little donation kind of column container thingy thingies were in there, and the empty ones were in the car, and then we take the empty ones in and then pick up the full ones and come back. She never even got out. She was
Uh-huh.
just driving us.
She's very good at delegating. I love it. I need other
Yes, 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 yes. Well, I'm sure that she had had all the conversations with all the businesses initially, and we were just the same kids that came in every couple of days. So, um, yeah, that summer was certainly full of lots of phone calls and lots of people. I mean, everyone on the beach felt the same way. Nobody wanted to see Jockey's Ridge go away, and everybody really thought it was already like a part of the town, part of the state, whatever. Nobody really understood that it was privately owned. So, um, after the kind of August 15th, you cannot do this anymore. Stop, stop, stop. Kind of everything really got seriously rolling forward. And many of the board members and the people that were part of the People to Preserve Jockey's Ridge were people Mom already knew, that were either politically active or part of the town of Nags Head, or working for Mom at the time, so that so that they could get voluntold what to do. We always kid around now, as brothers and sisters. We always kid around now that we were voluntold a lot. Voluntold. So, but that's the best way. You just do it because that's what you're supposed to do. And I think everybody on the Outer Banks really felt that way. There were people with super passionate. Now, not everybody wanted to sell their land. I know that, and I can remember a couple of those phone calls and conversations that I overheard that where people were not happy. So it wasn't complete unity, but in the end, I feel like it was the best thing for not only Nags Head, not only the Outer Banks, all of Dare County, but even for our state. I mean, who else has a sand dune? I mean, come on, we're cool, right?
Carolista's resolve worked wonders. A few months after stopping the bulldozer on the backside of the dune, the State Division of Parks and Recreation agreed to conduct a feasibility study on making Jockey's Ridge into a state park in direct response to lobbying by Carolista and the People for the Preservation of Jockey's Ridge organization that she started. In 1974, it was declared a natural national landmark, and in 1975, it officially became a state park when the state of North Carolina bought 152 acres from private landowners. The Nature Conservancy bought another large tract of land, which included Nags Head Woods, and the rest was purchased using funds raised by the People to Preserve Jockey's Ridge. Anne Cabell and her siblings in the Pink Hut, peddling bumper stickers and swapping out donation coin jars at local businesses.
Deeds used to have deeds were done on legal, like hand typed on an IBM Selectric kind of thing, legal pages, and they would have a blue color back sheet. And on that sheet, it folded down. So it almost looked like a letter when it was finally folded down. I remember Mom had like a bucket that she carried with her. I want to say, and I don't know if she actually walked into the General Assembly with that bucket or not, but they were literal deeds for people's properties that owned part of Jockey's Ridge. And either they signed them over or they were paid for their property, because many people were paid for their property. But some people also donated, like literally their land for Jockey's Ridge State Park. I mean, and it wasn't just like a couple of property owners. I mean, there were many, many, many property owners. And again, mom would talk to every single one of them, meet with them. I mean, it was really a huge community project and successful.
Carolista and her team did it. They really pulled it off. And you so seldom see that in this sort of people against the man scenario. But she wasn't even done yet. According to my sister, Hannah Bunn West, in her book, Remarkable Women of the Outer Banks, which has a whole chapter about Carolista Baum, quote, but the unstoppable Carolista wasn't finished saving the Outer Banks just yet. She became the president of the Chickamaucomico Historical Association, fighting to preserve the Chickamaucomico Life-Saving Station. Famous for their legendary Merlot rescue, but abandoned by the U.S. Coast Guard in 1954. She received a North Carolina Historic Preservation Award of Merit in 1977 for her role in saving the station, just 2 years after saving the dunes. She also served as the chairperson of the USS Monitor Research Council, advocating for the shipwreck that was discovered in 1973. Due in part to her efforts, it was named as the first ever National Marine Sanctuary in 1975. End quote. Carolista died in 1991. Hannah writes, quote, memories of the beloved, vivacious Nags Header are colored by descriptions of her radiant smile, her charm, her grace, and the love she exuded for her family and friends. She never knew a stranger, and she never backed down from what she knew to be the right thing to do. She led a life that continues to inspire. End quote. Following in her mother's footsteps, as you heard in her introduction earlier, Ann Cabell continues to be involved in the preservation of Jockey's Ridge through the Friends of Jockey's Ridge nonprofit organization. They've done so much and even continue some of the creative fundraising that Ann Cabell was so familiar with as a child. So your mother started the People to Preserve Jockey's Ridge, and now there's Friends of Jockey's Ridge. Is that
Two different
two different
organizations.
groups? Okay. And and then you're part of the Friends of Jockey's Ridge. So what is sort of like the goal or the purpose of that organization?
So the Friends of Jockey's Ridge is very similar to People to Preserve Jockey's Ridge, to protect and kind of educate and to serve the park. And in as much really the Friends raise money and do things to supplement the rangers that are there on the ridge at the park. Lots of times the state doesn't have the funds for the educational programs, for the cute stickers that for kids, for like the microscope.
Popping in to say that I know all about the microscope because my 5-year-old is obsessed.
We raised money for the community room in the new visitor center. So the visitor center was updated a couple of years ago. It looks amazing. And many people, this is what blows my mind, I think the most, is many people don't realize they've been to the visitor center once or twice, but in the last 2.5 years, they haven't been. It's like a new place. It's a little bit bigger, but the amount of light that's in there is incredible. And there is one space, one large room that's the community room. It's fantastic. You can hold meetings in there. You could have a reception in there if you got married on Jockey's Ridge. We meet, the Friends of Jockey's Ridge board meets there once a month. We did a book signing with the Save Our Sand Dunes book at Hannah Bunn West. Maybe you know her.
Yeah, I happen to know her.
I mean, it's just incredible. But it was really designed for families and groups to come in after being on the ridge and have, number one, air conditioning, and number two, shelter, and then number three, an activity area. So we do things like that. We have we work with Pepsi on the vending machines that are outside, and we use that money as in addition to donations that are dropped inside at the donation box to pay for all kinds of things. Like we pay for the housing for the interns every summer. So they have, believe it or not, kind of like barracks. They are on at the base of the ridge, kind of on the bypass side. And we pay for their stay Friends of Jockey's Ridge, if you can imagine it, we raise money to do everything. We did some of the shoreline planting on the sound side. And we have done that and we continue to do that. As a matter of fact, we are writing a grant right now for the 50th anniversary and asking for 6,500 plugs, if you can imagine, to plant to basically stabilize the shoreline because the dune moves both ways, east and west, and north and south. But that shoreline, the living shoreline on the sound side, is always deteriorating because of the way storms come through. So another fundraiser is the boardwalk that gets people out to literally the edge of the dune. There was a General Assembly allocation to extend that from about the 450 feet that it is now out to about 1,760 feet.
Wow, cool.
Yeah, so it's a huge deal. So we're raising money for the signage that goes down. So all the interpretive signs that go down so that people can take a rest as they're walking out. I mean, we raise money for everything. If you can think of it, we raise money for it. And it all goes into the park. If every visitor to Jockey's Ridge would donate just $1 to the Friends of Jockey's Ridge, we could do so much more. If there are 1 million or close to 1 million people a year that visit Jockey's Ridge, just $1, oh my gosh, blow my mind. So, but you also have to think about all the school groups. Now, the school groups are not going to donate. So even if every family or every couple or however individual would donate, I mean, we would be in such great shape. We could do so much good stuff. But anyway, and I digress. I know now I've just put on my fundraising hat. Here I go.
The passion is there. And after learning about Carolista Baum, I feel confident saying she got it from her mama. If you would like to donate to the Friends of Jockey's Ridge to aid their efforts or become a member, I've linked their website in the description of this episode. Jockey's Ridge is a very special place, and it's faced some danger again recently. Last October, a Rules Review Commission stripped Jockey's Ridge of its Area of Environmental Concern status, which helps protect it from development. Now remember, it's still a state park, so no one is plopping condos right on top of the dune anytime soon. But the surrounding areas without that AEC designation are potentially in danger. And the surrounding areas are more important than you think. Geologist Dr. Stan Riggs says of development near the dunes in a Virginian Pilot article, quote, "As we continue to lock up sand, not let it move around as much, the dunes lose their ability to rebuild themselves," end quote. Which is a real shame. As my sister, Hannah, recently said in an interview for the Coastal Review about her book, Save Our Sand Dunes, quote, "The slogan for the campaign to save Jockey's Ridge in the 1970s was Jockey's Ridge for all the people. The message is that this is a space for everyone to enjoy, rather than have private developers profit off of it. It's a space for all the people to enjoy," end quote.
And Sunset is absolutely gorgeous at the ridge because you get to see the sun literally go behind Roanoke Island, where the Lost Colony is at Fort Raleigh, and literally basically drop into the Sound, which is and the sky is ablaze and the colors are amazing. And if there are any clouds, they just play off the cloud. It's just, I can't even tell you.
She really can't. It's something you have to experience firsthand to really grasp. And once you've experienced it, you understand. You understand why Jockey's Ridge was worth saving. Why a busy working mother with 3 small children put her life on hold, her marriage in jeopardy, her reputation on the line to stop it from being demolished. To keep it for all the people. Thank you all so very much for listening to History Fix. I hope you found this story interesting and maybe you even learned something new. If you would like to support the Friends of Jockey's Ridge, that link is in the description. I've also linked out to my sister's website, hannahwestwrites.com, as I've heavily referenced two of her books, Remarkable Women of the Outer Banks and Save Our Sand Dunes, which she co-wrote with today's guest, Ann Kabelbaum. Be sure to follow my Instagram at HistoryFixPodcast to see some images that go along with this episode and to stay on top of new episodes as they drop. And I'd also really appreciate it if you would rate and follow History Fix on whatever app you're using to listen, and help me spread the word by telling a few friends about it. That'll make it much easier to get your next fix. Information used in this episode was sourced from Remarkable Women of the Outer Banks, Save Our Sand Dunes, WRAL News, Coastal Review, the North Beach Sun, the Virginian Pilot, the Outer Banks History Center, OBX Stuff, and Atlantic Realty. As always, links to these sources can be found in the show notes.